Hi, I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and this is the Bonsai Stuff podcast. This episode is going to talk about knowing when it's the right time to do work on your bonsai, and more importantly, when it's not time. Knowing what you have to do, when you should do it, what the indicators are that it's strong enough to be worked on. So I want to chat a lot about that. Want to talk a little bit more about a few historical records that I've come across lately that are really interesting on some really old trees. That sort of links to the first topic we're going to be talking about. I'm going to delve into historical records, and I want to just touch on finally the Bonsai Network again. We've talked about it a long time ago, but I want to revisit that one and just finish off the podcast with that. So thank you for listening in. Please stick around. It's going to be an interesting one, and strap yourself in. Here we go. So when's it the right time to do work on one of your trees? It's a really, really difficult one. I reflected on it a lot. I had a bit of background. I was asked to do a demonstration at one of our bonsai clubs here in Victoria, in Melbourne, and the piece of material was really old spruce. Not you look at it from a distance and you go, oh, there's problems with it. No, it's not the best, but it's got such age about it and such a history, and it had been neglected for a long time, and it was sort of looked after and brought back to health. And for the demonstration, it was to decide whether it was worked on or whether it was something else. So the tree was brought round to me prior to the demonstration. I had a look, and some of the things that you look for when you're deciding whether it's time to work on trees, especially old stock that maybe has long leggy growth and there's not much going for it, and you think there's so much other stuff I could be working on right now. One thing that I pride myself on is I never deliberately push a tree too far just for entertainment. At a demonstration, you can make these things look fantastic, and you can wire them to the nth degree and cut things off really short, and knowing in the back of your head that there's a really good chance that the branch you've just wired, you've cut off all the new growth, so therefore there's a good chance that whole branch is going to die somewhere down the track. But it looks really nice for a photo, and everyone goes, wow, that's great. And I see it a lot with demonstrations where they are the demonstrators, and this happens to everybody, including myself, where you're under pressure to achieve a result that everyone looks at and goes, wow, that's fantastic. The cameras come out and everyone's like, wow, that's amazing. For me, I think the positivity out of a demonstration comes when someone says, you know what, that's enough. I've got to stop now because I need to pull back a little bit and then go into explaining it to the people that are watching, the reasons why you've got to that point and said, right, that's enough. There's no more, because taking it any further is going to mean that you're pushing the health and viability of the tree longer term. And there'll be a cost. You might not be around for the cost. The person who owns a tree, or the person who bids on it normally after a demonstration at auction, is then left to pick up the pieces. And it's very very disheartening when that sort of thing happens, because often the owner or the person that acquires the tree at that point puts a lot of pressure on himself, saying, yeah, geez, it died. It's my fault. I did this. I did that. I should have done this, should have done that. Well, more often than not, it's probably dead before you even took it out of the room, because it's been flogged within an inch of its life. So I want to get back to when to know it's the right time. And some of the things that I look for on this tree was backbudding. Backbudding is one of those things that, especially on a needle variety tree, that takes a lot of strength, and it's very encouraging when it happens, especially on older wood. You get your new growth, obviously, the tips on these species like spruce, which sort of seem to just want to grow longer and longer and longer, and that word elongating species sort of comes up a lot with them. But they just want to keep extending. And one of the things that I look for is backbudding. And when I looked at the stronger areas of the tree, there's lots of backbudding in those areas. So I looked at it and went, well, you've got a real chance here with this tree, because it's been, looked after for a good year and a half, couple of years, fertilised, lovely position, starting to bring its health back. There were definitely issues with it, in the fact that it hadn't been repotted since 2008 or something. So it's been a very long time in the pot. But the tree's recovering and it's bouncing back and it's on the uptick, which is great. So then when I looked at that tree, I knew that there was limits to what I could do. I couldn't, and I didn't want to anyway with the tree, but major bending on something like that is really, really stressful, and massive foliage removal off a lot of the branches and coming back to those new little buds is a big no-no. My approach with it is, which may be different for different people around the world, but my approach is that I like to leave some foliage past these new buds to have that sap draw that goes past those new buds, and then allow those buds to get strong enough and those little branches to start to develop that they start pulling the sap themselves, and then look at reducing the length of the branches. So the tree that I worked on had really quite long branches on it, and a few of the lower ones were way too long, but I had to keep them long with that new foliage on the tips, encouraging some sap flow past the point where I want some back budding, or the owner of the tree wants back budding to happen just a little bit further up those branches. Once the budding happens, once it gets strong enough, then somewhere down the track you can look to come in and cut it. So what I suppose I'm getting to is this, you can work on the trees within limits and know what those limits are, because you push it too hard, you're going to suddenly have dieback, branches, tree, the whole thing goes into the bin. Otherwise, work it appropriately, put a plan in place for your trees. We come back to this plan that I talked about early this year. Once you've got that plan in place for your trees, you start getting the back budding, you start getting that budding strong enough, the tree starts to take off, then you can start looking at reducing the branches. Gets to repotting time, repot the tree because it's a little bit stronger as well now, improve the soil, improve the root system, and then the whole system starts to work. And I was asked, roughly what's the time frame, from here to being a nice tree with more compacted growth and good branching and good pads and all that sort of stuff. And I reckon it's probably 5 years. But as I've said, 5 years in the life of a bonsai and life of a tree, it's not that much. It's a snippet really. And if you think about how amazing trees are, like this thing was last repotted, last had its roots worked, or last had anything done to the soil system in 2008. It's 2023 now. And this thing's pushing out new buds, and it's got lots of new growth on it because it's been treated well. Can it be treated better? 100%. Yeah. Can it be taken to the next level? It definitely can. Definitely can. But from here on out, you need to make sure that you've got the right systems in place, and it gets on the bonsai treadmill, and it starts getting looked after appropriately, repotted at the right time, into the right mix, fed, watered, positioned, all the stuff, all the golden rules of bonsai get followed for it, and suddenly it will start taking those leaps and bounds forward. So I look at, when I do a demo like that, I take ultimate responsibility for the long-term health and viability of the tree. Is it something that you look at a photo of and go, yeah, it looks great? Not always. Not always, because it's like I consider it more setting the bones for something, and rather than trying to make it this masterpiece that everyone goes, wow, and you've spaghettied the branches and swung them all back in, so the growth that's sort of 30, 40 centimetres away from this dainty little trunk gets zigzagged all the way back in, or wraps around the back of the tree and comes forward to make it look like it's far more compacted. That's not my style. I'll leave that for others to do, but it's definitely my focus is, as I do with my trees, as I do with anyone's. It's the focus is on the strength and health of the tree. So going now, sort of splitting away from that, talking about still knowing when it's the right time. There's been this week alone, like it's been a great week this week. There's lots been happening for me. There's these bonsai intensives, and there's been lots of work on customers' collections, and having people visit me in the workshop for the first time, and it's been awesome. So there's a couple of instances that happen where this knowing when it's the right time theme that I thought of since sort of early week doing this this demo at the club. I had an instance where I went to someone's place, had a look, and we got to work for the second time on a radiata. And I'm going to come back and talk about radiatas as well, because I know that sort of sparked a bit of interest the last couple of podcasts. So I got to work on this radiata, and it's when we first worked on it. a year ago or thereabouts, it was heavy wiring, and that was it. And it was long and leggy, and it reminded me a lot of the spruce that I looked at, because, I said, we've got to do the right thing by this. It's got to get repotted. It's got to, it's got to be fed well. It's got to be in the right sunny spot. And we're not, we'll encourage back budding and we'll encourage growth, but you've got to trust me. There's a process to go through. And the fellow whose tree it is, he's a great grower of bonsai, enthusiastic as the day is long, and really competent with it as well. So we got this time, I was invited back because there's been this massive flush of growth, and with radiators, as I talk about, now's the time that I get in and do candle cutting on them, which is sort of what this intensive program's about coming up. And so it was time to get in there and do some thinning out and whatever. And looking back at the pictures from sort of the while ago when we wired it to now, it's like, wow, that's, it was December, I think, last year. So what's that, 10 months, thereabouts? And in 10 months, this tree's turned the corner. And it's amazing how I just get reminded it's quite an old tree, and it's got a lovely history to it. And I'm going to talk more about the history of trees in a minute as well. But I love it when you see that, or you get to visualize the true nature and strength of trees, and that, time doesn't tick past the same as what it does for us. It ticks past really, really slowly for trees, and they go into a holding pattern, and they'll just wait their time, wait till it's perfect. And then when everything lines up and we do the right thing by them and look after them as they need to be looked after, as they want to be looked after, then we get the results. Then we get the growth. Then we get everything that we want with bonsai, the compaction of pads, and you get to take steps forward with them. So what when we started working on this tree the other day, looked like, big bushy areas, get in there, open it up, thin it back out again, get back to our division. And we start, we've suddenly gone from working on primary branches to now we're onto the secondary branches. And it's like, that's amazing. For a tree that, a couple of years ago, you would have looked at, at a nursery and sort of gone, nah, it's, whatever, it's probably too much hard work. And seriously, in such a short period of time, doing the right thing by the tree has made it into something which is going to be a brilliant bonsai in a really short period of time. And I think that as a custodian of one of these trees, as you start seeing them take those steps forward, it's so encouraging. And it's so much like it's the light bulb moment where you go, it works. It works in the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and you go, that's what the soil mix is for, and that's what the fertilizing regime's for, and that's what putting it in the sunny spot means, and that's what doing this watering means, and that's what making sure I give this tree everything that it needs at the right time when it needs it. That's when you start getting the results. And when you start getting the results, it's like, now that plan that I put in place from a tree, I can start ticking these boxes off, saying, you know what, I'm there. And suddenly something which, as you go back and look at the original photos and go, there's no way this thing's going to be a beautiful bonsai. Suddenly in a real short period of time, you can go, yes, it is. It's going to, because look at it now, like it's sort of halfway along the journey to being something which is just brilliant. So, I love it. I really do. And another one that I had was a tree, a Japanese maple, really, really old. And it came into the workshop with a great fella, very talented bonsai artist as well. And we sort of started talking about plans for this thing and the bari. And it's like, this is such a good tree. Where did it come from? And he goes, actually, this is what I've got. And he pulls out a history of it, original photos from the original owner showing it back in 1960. And it's like, oh my God, so this tree's over 60 years old, and you can see the photos from when this maple was a little whip, a baby little whip. And the original owner put so much love into it and documented, when it was repotted year after year after year after year, when it went into bonsai shows, when it had this, when it had that. And it was, I tell you, I was blown away, because I often get asked myself, or I often ask people and say, what's the history, or where'd it come from, or what's this, what's that? And you've got a rough idea, and you remember it gets a bit fuzzy when you've got so many trees, but you sort of go, I think it came from here, and I think it was this, and then you go, you sort of go, I'd love to have a history of this thing. You sort of push a button on the side of the pot and up bangs this, Wikipedia about this tree to show you where it started, when it started, and the work that's been done on it. And, and this is that, coming back to the reflection that I did about the trees on show best in show or whatever it is, and show a bit of history on it as well. It's that sort of linking to the past that I think is really, really super important. This tree had it, and it wasn't like, oh, I know it came from such and such or whatever. It's like, bang, here's actual printed photos. That's how old this thing is, that it's got printed photos. And I mean, not that many people print photos these days, but I think that sort of historical record of your trees is fantastic. And it just reminded me, and I made a note about it straight away, saying, or after that session finished, saying, make sure you pump it on the podcast to take photos of your trees, even if they just sit in a digital form on your phone somewhere down the track. You never know how the world's going to spin. You might want to look back on whatever particular tree it is and go, these are the stages, this is where it's come from. And having seen it earlier at another fella's place and seeing those photos as well, and getting that real lift from it, and then next day seeing it again and getting a lift, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. Like, it's the historical link to the past for these trees is super important for everybody. Like, they're not even my trees, and I got an absolute buzz out of being involved or having, putting a little thumbprint on these trees for somewhere in the future. I take no credit for anything whatsoever. What I do love though, and what I want to encourage you is the feeling that you'll get. Like, I'm bursting out of my skin about it now, because I think that, it's makes me want to look back at photos of some of my trees and see how they've progressed and how they've developed and the longevity of them, and maybe look at a few and possibly even print a few out of the important ones to me, and just keep a file on them and document it and add it, and just keep it as the file for me, stuff that I want to look back on later in life and just see. Anyway, so getting back to this, knowing when it's the right time, last couple of points that I want to push on this one is, doesn't need to all be styled in one sitting. That is so important, that you don't need to take your trees every time that they sit in front of you and have them look like a masterpiece. If making it look like a masterpiece is going to do long-term damage to the tree, then don't do it. Don't do it. Just take steps. Take appropriate steps at the right time. Leave enough time in between. That whole old adage of, going slower will get you there quicker applies so much to when you're styling your trees. So don't look to flog them to make it look magnificent in one hit. Make them masterpieces long term. Like I said, time ticks differently for trees, so don't do too much to them in any one hit. And you've got to be honest. Like, the last part of this section of the podcast is this is a self-reflection. When you have that tree sitting in front of you and you've got your branch cutters, you've got your trunk splitter, you've got your branch benders, you've got the bloody 6mm wire out in front of you, and you're thinking, yep, I'm into it. Just ask yourself a simple question. Have you done everything you possibly can to improve the health and strength of the tree before working on it? All right, so if the answer to that is maybe or no, then just leave it. Let it go a little bit longer. Do part of the work and then come back to it. Because often when we do this major work on trees, this first styling, the first big bends, trunk splitting, whatever it is, then that's going to be quite stressful to the tree. So you need to make that internal assessment and be honest with yourself. Have you done everything you possibly can to improve the health and strength of the tree? It's a tough one. Because I'm bloody guarantee you that almost always it'll be you can do more. Almost always. I say that to myself. I really do. Like, I pull trees in there and go, have you done everything you possibly can? Well, I did 2 feeds. The third one I was a bit slack with. Maybe I didn't probably give it as much food as what I could have. Yeah, okay, maybe. Yeah. And anyway, when you look at it in the cold hard light of day, if you haven't, hold back. If you have, and you're honest about it, and the tree's ready to go, then it'll bounce back. It'll do well. Don't take it too far, and don't quote me when things go wrong with it. But just be mindful that if you've done everything you possibly can to improve the health and strength of that tree, then they're good to go. Strength is the ultimate, and health is health is number one with everything we do with our bonsai. Okay, so The purpose or my intention with this podcast is to be as honest as I can, put everything out there as much as I possibly can, and help in any way that I can. You know that, like I try and be a source of inspiration, of help, of everything. Inspire, inform, involve. That's the three I's which I built Bonsai Matsu on, and it's the three I's that I continue to thrive with at the moment. I love it. I really enjoy it. I get a buzz out of it. I get a kick out of it. So it's not just me doing these things because it's good for you. It's also good for me. I think that I look back on my bonsai life and think, what could I have used at the start, or what would have helped me, or what would have made my life so much better? What would have made my trees better? What would have made my bonsai journey so much more enjoyable? And it's like, well, these are the things that I do, and that's one of the main reasons for this podcast is to do it. Do I think that everything that I say is the gospel when it comes to bonsai, and there's no other way of doing things? No, not at all. Not at all. I'm not that arrogant. I'm not the person that stands on the mountain and shouts down, "This is the way and this is the only way." I don't accept that. And anyone that does is a fool, and needs to be taken with a grain of salt. But no. So what I try and do with this is use it as a platform that maybe encourages conversation, or encourages you to get involved and do something like joining clubs, all that sort of stuff. I think that's great because there's so much to it, and if you're listening to this podcast while you're driving to work, makes you want to bust your nut at work and do the best you possibly can so you can get home and tear into your bonsai because I've given you a little snippet of something that you can take home and use. Fantastic. That's brilliant, because I know that ultimately will make you happier, which makes me really happy in what I do. So with that said, as I said, I'll just reiterate, I don't believe, and I don't want everything I say to be the ultimate gospel. Are there variations on what I say? Are there different ways to do these things? Yeah, sure there are. But all I can do is be honest with you about what I do and show visually the results of what I do, and try and make it as easy as possible and break it down with no grey areas, no hidden facts of, oh, you didn't tell me that. Oh, I have to do that as well. Is that how come your trees look like that and mine look like this? I don't do that. I try and make it that it's your bonsai journey, whatever it is the best it possibly can be. And if I have a snippet, a smidgen of influence over that and it's positive, brilliant, job done. I'm very happy. So talking about that, I talked about radiata pines, and I love radiata pines. Right, I think that they're one of the best possible species that can be used for bonsai when you know how to do them. And there's been a few conversations lately because of the podcast where I talked about the timing and what I do with them and all that sort of stuff and the results I get. And I was contacted by somebody, a listener to the podcast, and they said that there was some people having a bit of a chat about radiatas recently that he overheard, and it was different facts and whatever and references, and it made me smile ear to ear, because I'm not upset in the slightest that they may have been saying that the way I was doing it was incorrect or that it's not right. It made me smile because I was so encouraged that people were getting passionate about radiata pines, that they were actually talking about them with people, because I know mine's a very limited experience of one person, but when I started talking a long time ago about radiatas and how I think they've got potential and there's all this upside to them, I was shut down very quickly by senior bonsai people saying, no, they're rubbish. No, everyone's getting rid of them. No one knows how to control things. And when I said, well, look, I think that we can do it like this, and I think this would be the case, I got told, look, there's some pretty experienced people around, and I'm sure someone would have found it. If there was a way you could do it, they would have found it. It's like, yeah, but what would you know? And it's like I got shut down with it. So I was like, oh. So my delving into radiatas was probably pushed back, 4 or 5 years as a result of going, oh, they're no good. They're not good for bonsai. And I find that knockdown, rather than the lift up, is a really common approach. No. You don't know what you're talking about. But like I said, the super encouraging part for me in relation to these conversations about radiata, even though they were different methodologies and different approaches, at least they're about radiata. At least they're about a species of bonsai or a species of tree that I think have got an absolutely massive potential in bonsai, and people were passionate about it. Seriously, how bloody good is that? I don't think that this podcast could achieve any more in life than that. And I'm so encouraged, and I encourage everyone that listens to this podcast to think about bonsai and, use what comes across your radar through a knowledge base and absorb it and take it on board and create a path, create a journey for yourself and stick with it and make sure you're consistent. That's the big thing with your bonsai. Make sure you're consistent, but be open to stuff. Never stop learning, never shut shop and say, that's it. I know everything about bonsai and I can't learn anything else, because that's crap. I push myself to make sure I do stay open to stuff. And when I hear something or someone says, hey, have you heard about, or do you know that this product does this? Or do you know, it's like I could easily turn around and go, yeah, sure, no worries. I've always done it this way, so I'm going to keep doing it that way. But I stop myself and go, you know what, there's actually a lot to this where I could get something out of this, and it may be a better way of doing things. It's like that turning the corner moment when it comes to using different substrates in the soil, where you suddenly go, wow, that's awesome. The big thing for me, I talk about it a hell of a lot, was my perception of changing from water retention with a soil mix to root growth. Once I got onto the root growth path, it was like, the skies opened up, the sun came shining through on my head, and I went, that's it. How good's this? This is amazing. Whereas if I'd stuck in the past going, no, that's not right. No, you need water. You need to keep water around your roots. If I'd stuck there, then I tell you what, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I encourage you, when you do hear things like on this podcast or any podcast or anything on YouTube or whatever, enjoy it. Learn from it, take on board what you can. I always say that, there's got to be, a path, a consistent path that we follow to this. Make sure that the advice you're getting is from a reputable source. The source, the streaming of information these days is thick and fast, and some of it is extremely humorous, and some of it is highly incorrect, and a lot of it is really good stuff. So you've just got to sort your way through the chaff to work out what's viable and what's not. But like I said, this, for me, the most encouraging part of this podcast is that people talk about stuff, that you open your mind to it, and you get involved and you get passionate about bonsai. Because if we don't have passion in bonsai, then I think we're missing the party. So I just want to finish off the podcast just reflecting back on the Bonsai Network and why it's so important. I've had occasion lately to go into bonsai shows and, to go to clubs and do demonstrations and lots of different things, and people coming into the workshops and me visiting people. And I love it. Honestly, I love the connection that you make with people, because we're from so many different parts of the world. We're from so many different backgrounds. We've got so much personal history of what we do outside of the bonsai world, but we connect. We all join together, and we all become this one web of tree lovers. And I think it's really important and should never be understated, which is the reason why I'm swinging back to it, because it's something which I've loved. You walk into a room and people say, "Oh, g'day, Scott. Yeah, g'day, mate. How are you? Like, what have you been up to? What's, how's everything? How's the family? How are the trees? What's happening with them and stuff like that." And I just think that sort of connection that we get through the bonsai world, and people make connections worldwide. You don't have to meet them face to face to have a connection. And I see that when someone posts something on Facebook, and I love it when anyone that I've had any single thing to be involved with, I see them get on and comment and and say something really positive and be that person to lift someone up, even when they could, it's so easy to be mean. It's so easy to be horrible, but it's not the right thing to do. And it's so, it warms my heart when I see that, and I think, that's part of my Bonsai Network. That's this web that we're creating together of Bonsai Love, like that we share it so thick and fast, and everyone's there to sort of pick up someone and never forget where you came from. Never forget that you were the person that makes that post, that you were the person that asked that question, or you were the person that had the doubts, because it's, it's so easy to, laugh at them and say, oh my God, yeah, it's dead. But don't forget, there was a time in your life where you had something do that to you, and you just wish that maybe you could have asked, maybe you didn't ask, maybe you asked a family member or whatever, or maybe you chucked it in the bin. You didn't learn from it. But when people do these things, I feel a great sense of pride and admiration for the people that put themselves up there and go, you know what, I could tear this person a new one, I could knock them down, but I don't. I help them. See if you can get them through to that next phase, because it's so. The benefit we get from being with our trees, you know what it is. If you're listening to this podcast, you know the benefit we get. I don't have to spell it out to you again, and I'm not going to. But other people that maybe are just starting their bonsai journey, or that have had an issue or a setback, that's when they need to be picked up. They need to be given a bit of love and TLC and go, you know what, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Move on. Next, this is what probably caused it. Keep an eye out for it next time, but just keep going. Keep going, because you never know, that person that you're talking to, or that you're messaging, or you're helping, that you're being involved with, might be someone who goes on to encourage another 100 people in bonsai, and those 100 people go on and encourage another 1,000 people in bonsai, and next thing you know, there's bonsai nurseries popping up with fantastic stock all around the place, all because you've helped one person. You've gone and done the right thing by one person. And what's good for bonsai is good for all of us. If we can lift everyone up in bonsai, then it helps all of us somewhere along the way. You might not think it does. It might be easier to sort of do the knockdown, but it's not. It's this bonsai network that we've created that's growing, that continues to grow, and I'm wrapped. I'm really, really happy that there is that positivity in the messages that I get about it as well. It's you're all legends. Seriously, it's so nice, and it's really nice to know when you go to the bonsai shows, or you go to a bonsai meeting, or you get onto a forum or a chat, or you comment. You're not alone. None of us are alone. We're all connected in one way or another. You can be in the darkest, coldest corner of the world, and you've still got a love for bonsai. You don't have to have masterpieces. You don't have to have trees that are 1 million years old. You just got to have that passion. Once you've got that passion, you're part of the crew. You're part of the family. That's it, and it's there for life, because it never goes away. Might dwindle for a little bit. There might be other things in life that take you away, but it never gets out of your blood. Once it's there, it's there for good. Just depends how much fertilizer and sunshine you give it as to how much it grows, and whether it's 1, 2, 10 bonsai, 100, 1,000, whatever it is. So just fanning the flames and pushing that love that you've got, and you'll see it grow no end. So it is really important. Keep up the positivity, and make sure that you're doing the right thing, and think of the person that you're messaging as you somewhere in your past. That's all you have to do. Thanks for sticking around, folks. Really appreciate it. As I say every time, I love it. I love this podcast. I think it's a great forum to get the love of bonsai spread far and wide, and I'm glad that you enjoy it as much as what you do. It's become hopefully part of the routine for you now, as I've been told it has, now that it comes out on a weekly basis, and it's pumping. There's still lots more to come for the rest of the year, so it's not over by a long stretch of the imagination. I do want to say a big thank you to the new subscribers that have come in too in the last short period. I love it. And those that have been with me from the start or any way along, thank you very much. It really means a lot. Really means a lot to me that you support me and you encourage me as well with your kind words and your actions in taking or purchasing a subscription with this, because it's it is a lot of work, and I love it. I love to know that you guys have got my back. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy your time with the bonsai at the moment. For us, spring, we're heading into the last part of it. We've still got fluctuating temperatures here in Melbourne, up and down and up and down, hot and cold and hot and cold. But as I look out the window, it's nice and sunny. Birds are chirping, grass is growing a million miles an hour. The trees are looking lush and great, and everything's heading to the point where it needs something to be done with it. And my trees are strong, and a lot of trees I'm seeing through the workshop are strong. Fertilising's happening left, right, and centre, so it's a great time. I love it. So make sure you spend a lot of time with them at the moment. Keep an eye on them, bugs, pests, all that sort of stuff. They're rampant. You think they're gone, they're not. They're back. They're everywhere. So enjoy it. Have a quiet one with them. Make sure it's a cold one or a hot one, whichever one you want to have, a cup of tea or a cold beer, glass of wine, whatever. Make sure you just spend time with your trees, all right? And until next time, as always, happy bonsai.